Project Prometheus, a name that was never meant to echo beyond the cold hallways of classified research labs. A project designed to bend the laws of physics, challenge the limits of human ambition, and test the boundaries of what governments are allowed to admit. Tonight, we're going deeper into the pages that were burned, the files that vanished, and the questions that still haunt the people who touched this dangerous idea. It begins with a problem humanity has never solved. How do you explore the outer planets when energy dies long before you arrive? Solar panels fade into darkness beyond Mars. Chemical rockets burn out in weeks. Everything we send moves like a drifting bottle tossed into a cosmic ocean. But Prometheus was something different. It was the idea of placing a miniature star inside a spacecraft, a nuclear reactor in the void of space, giving us endless energy, endless propulsion, endless possibilities. But here's the strange part. The deeper you study Prometheus, the more you realize it wasn't just a mission. It was a warning. The first hints came from researchers who described the project's internal culture as unusually restricted. Engineers were split into compartments. Communication between teams required multiple layers of clearance. Even basic schematics were hidden under redacted overlays. You don't do that for a simple science mission. By 2004, NASA announced Prometheus with excitement, a next-generation propulsion system, a nuclear-powered spacecraft called JIMO, capable of visiting the icy moons of Jupiter, places where oceans of liquid water might hide beneath frozen crusts. But behind the scenes, something else was happening. Reports surfaced of intelligence agencies quietly showing up at design reviews. Meetings that were supposed to be purely scientific suddenly included officials with backgrounds in nuclear security, defense logistics, and deep space surveillance. Engineers later said the shift was unmistakable. Prometheus was no longer just about science. It had become strategic. But strategic for what? Some say it was simple. A nuclear-powered spacecraft could reach any location in the solar system faster than anything ever built. It could carry cameras, sensors, or payloads we don't have names for yet. Others claim the real goal was much deeper. A nuclear reactor in space doesn't just power engines. It powers computation, massive computation, enough to run autonomous analysis systems, surveillance instruments, or communication networks that don't depend on Earth. A spacecraft like that isn't an explorer, it's a sentinel. And then comes the strangest layer, the one researchers don't like to discuss. Why were Prometheus-related documents referencing energy cycles described in mythological analogies? Why did internal presentations compare the reactor's capabilities to restoring the fire humanity lost since the ancient world? Some dismissed it as poetic engineering. Others sensed something else, that the name Prometheus was chosen because the project wasn't just scientific, it was symbolic, a rebellion against the limits nature placed on us. And with every rebellion comes a punishment. By 2005, Prometheus began running into budget problems. That was the official explanation, but the numbers never matched. Funding didn't disappear, it was rerouted. Programs connected to Prometheus were folded into obscure offices with generic titles like Advanced Energy Systems Initiative. You can hide anything behind a name like that. One whistleblower claimed that a functional reactor prototype existed for nearly 6 months before the public cancellation. Another said the real breakthrough wasn't the reactor, but what happened when the reactor was coupled with a high-efficiency ion drive. According to him, the math didn't make sense. The projected thrust-to-power ratio was too high, almost impossibly high. When he questioned it, the room fell silent. Someone told him quietly, "Just do your part. The rest has already been solved." What does that mean? Who solved it? And how far ahead of us were they? Some theorists believe Prometheus was the first step toward a far more controversial technology, nuclear electric propulsion systems capable of maintaining acceleration for months at a time. Not bursts, but continuous push. A spacecraft like that could reach Saturn in a fraction of current mission times. It could reach the Kuiper Belt or even interstellar space within a human lifetime. And here's the unsettling part. If we could do that in the early 2000s, what can we do now? Because when a project this ambitious disappears on paper, it rarely dies in reality. It evolves. There are rumors of successor programs, names like Ares, Helios, Project Icarus, quietly circulating in aerospace circles. all unrelated publicly, but suspiciously similar in scope. There are patents filed by private contractors describing autonomous long-duration nuclear propulsion modules that suspiciously resemble early Prometheus diagrams. And then there are sightings. Strange, unexplained objects detected leaving Earth orbit with acceleration patterns no chemical rocket could achieve. Some dismiss them as scientific anomalies. Others whisper that Prometheus is still out there, traveling under a designation we're not allowed to know. But what if the truth is even stranger? What if the reactor wasn't the breakthrough? What if Prometheus uncovered something else, something about energy, stability, or space itself, that forced the government to bury it? Ideas of zero-point energy experiments appear in scattered leaked memos, referencing non-classical power fluctuations during reactor testing. One memo allegedly mentioned temporary field distortions that scientists couldn't explain. Field distortions. In a nuclear experiment, that's not a reactor problem, that's a physics problem. Maybe Prometheus stumbled onto something unexpected, something powerful, something dangerous, something humanity wasn't ready for. And maybe that was the real reason for the silence. Not because Prometheus failed, but because it succeeded too well. So now we're left with a legacy wrapped in secrecy, a project that promised humanity the fire of the gods, and then disappeared behind doors that will never open again. But every secret leaves a shadow, and every shadow leaves a trail. If a new spacecraft suddenly appears, capable of reaching the outer planets in months, if a private company unveils a breakthrough reactor that seems far too advanced, if a mission quietly launches without public explanation, then you'll know Prometheus didn't die. It evolved. And if we really did steal fire from the gods, the question isn't what we gained. The question is what will be asked of us in return. If you want more deep dives into forbidden science, hidden space technology, and the secrets shaping humanity's future, stay with me. Because out there in the darkness, something big is moving. And Prometheus may have been the first spark.